Hi, everyone. We're going to just give folks about 2 more minutes yet to join, and then we'll get started. So just hang tight. All right, so we're still probably going to have a couple of people filtering in, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so I think we can get the ball rolling. My name's Caitlin. I am part of the ERAC Events Committee, and I'm pleased to introduce Sarah from Admissions today. She's going to cover Lehigh's admissions process, some best practices for high school students, and general information. It should be a really good session, and I thank everybody for joining us today. So without further delay, Sarah, if you want to take over.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I hope you are looking forward to a weekend. I hope that you all get a nice, quiet, relaxing weekend. I think everyone would appreciate that. But I'm really excited to be here with you all talking about the admissions process. So I work in the admissions office. I have been doing so for about 14 years now, after being a Lehigh undergrad student myself and a Lehigh graduate student. So I have a presentation just to make sure that I stay on track, because that's always, you know, a challenge. But ultimately what I'm going to do is go over, I'm assuming you can all see that okay? Does that work? Or is that the wrong window? Hold on, I have it in presentation and I have does that work? That works better. That's bigger, right? Nods, thumbs up, anything? That does look better? Okay.
Yeah, we can see the just as welcome. Yeah, okay. The agenda.
And now it says agenda?
Yep.
Yay, technology, cool. It's only almost been a year. So this is what I plan to talk about. I have only about like 20 or 25 maybe minutes of content, and then I am going to turn it all over to you for whatever questions you have. So if you want to ask Lehigh specific questions, I actually got an email with some questions ahead of time. So I'll tackle those first, but then if you want to throw them in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself, I'm very happy to hear voices of real human beings, which is always kind of a fun treat. So certainly feel free to ask any questions that you have. And if you don't want to ask it, you can always, like publicly, you can always send me just like a direct kind of private message and I'll make sure not to share your name. So I'll start with kind of the general philosophy of our office. We are kind of the gatekeepers of the university, right? Our philosophy is that we will do a holistic application review. And that means that we do not have a chart. We do not have a formula. There is no magic A plus B equals admit and, you know, C plus A equals deny kind of framework that we have. We look at every piece of a student's application, and I will dive much more into that in just a few slides. We believe that we are admitting the future community members of Lehigh, and we're admitting our future alums. We are not just looking at it in a 1 year, we need heads and beds. We're really thinking about the kind of mixture of students and personalities and representation that we have, and that will be able to take advantage of Lehigh. Some pieces of the application will be more important to us. And again, I'll talk about this a little bit more specifically. And then some information just gives us context, right? It gives us a little bit of added insight into the experiences that the student may bring with them when they join us on campus. And finally, we will not admit students to fail. So, we will take chances. We will take into consideration a context of a student, where they come from, things that they've overcome. But if we have a concern or a fear that a student will fail in any kind of sense, right, academically or emotionally, or any other way, we will err on the side of not admitting a student, because it's much harder for them to have to leave once they are here. So, we are excited to think about all the ways that students contribute, but we also have to think about the ways that we need to meet goals. And so there are always, goals that we have to meet. There are things that we need to do, right? We can't have all of the students admitted into the College of Arts and Sciences. We need some students in business. We need some students in engineering. We definitely need students in our brand new College of Health. So we look at a lot of different factors and a lot of different pieces in a specific way. So I will talk about the process. All applications that come in are going to be read cover by cover, cover to cover, by an assigned reader. And so they are going to see every piece of it. They are going to look at the recommendations. They're going to look at the transcript. And again, I'll get into the actual pieces of the application, but we're not going to leave parts out for any one type of student. They're going to be considered holistically, and we're going to weigh each part of the application. It's going to be a factor. So we're not just going to completely ignore any one thing. It'll be discussed, it'll be considered, it may be dismissed, but we're not just going to say like, okay, well, we're just not going to pay attention to this one part. It will be passed through a committee. All applications will be presented in a committee. Some are discussed deeply, others are just kind of brought up and then moved forward pretty quickly when the decision is relatively clear. And then we will revisit an application if something significant changes. So does this mean we will revisit an application if a student applies and thought they were going to be captain of a team and then isn't the captain? No, not at all. That's fine. But if a student who's applying for business decides to drop their math class senior year, we might revisit that. If a student writes to us, or if the school writes to us and said this student has been suspended or expelled, yes, absolutely, we will revisit it. So it's not it's seen once and then it's never revisited again. It'll be seen by the initial reader, and then it will be seen again in the committee to discuss any updates and anything else that we might need to talk about. So the pieces of the application, I'll kind of dive in and tell you what is holistic, right? Like, what are all these different pieces that we would be looking at? The first piece that most of us open is the transcript, because this is really the bedrock that the remainder of the application must rest on. It is not just the GPA. And you will notice that on none of the bullet points is GPA listed, because I don't want to ruin the ending for anybody, but GPA is kind of a made up number. Every high school calculates GPA differently. Some are weighted, some are not weighted, some are out of 4, some are out of 4.3, 4.5, 5.0, 12. There's a school that I read that was out of a 12. I was like, just divide it by 3, then it's a 4, it's easy. But we aren't looking at the actual number. We're looking at the level of coursework that a student takes, the patterns and the trends. Have you always been in honors math? Have you never been in honors English? Do your grades go up when you are challenged, or do your grades go down a little bit? Parents ask us this question all the time. Is it better to have an A in a regular class or a B in an honors class? And that's the kind of stuff we're looking at, right? Like, is it as soon as you took the honors level, everything went to a B, or did that just one class go to a B? We look at the options that the school is providing to you. So if a student attends a high school where not a single advanced placement class is offered, we can't hold that against them. We need to make sure that they're taking the most rigorous classes that make sense for them. But if it's not an option, we're not going to sit around going like, oh, well, they really should have taken AP environmental science. It's like, well, if it's not offered, we can't say that you should have taken that. We look at the grading scales that the school offers. Some high schools will say a 92 to a 100 is an A, and some schools say a 90 to a 100 is an A. So we look at all of that. We will look at a student's class rank if that's provided. That's not something that we, swear by, but certainly it does give us a sense of where they stand in the academic pool from that specific class. And then we look at any additional context. Transcripts have a lot of information on them, dates absent. If a student says, oh yeah, I had mono my junior year and it was really rough, and it says, yeah, they were absent for 40 days, that's a really significant absence. If it says they were absent for 2 days, it's like, well, okay, let's make sure that everything makes sense. So we are looking for consistency, we're looking for strength, and we're also making sure that when a student tells us they want to major in something or they choose a specific college, that they're making choices that are preparing them for that. Sometimes students will be like, oh, well, I'll apply to this program because I think it's going to be easier to get in. And the acceptance rates are pretty similar across the colleges, but if your curriculum doesn't make sense for that thing that you picked will be easier, then it just got a lot harder for you to be admitted because it's not really adding up, and we're not sure that you would necessarily be successful without the prep. So the next piece is the body of the application itself. And so we accept two different types of applications. One is the common application. It's been around forever. If you apply to college, you may have applied to colleges through the common application. And then the coalition application is newer, and we are a new partner with Coalition. It does not matter which one you choose or which one a student chooses. They can apply using either. There is no benefit or drawback. They're just different. So this is a lot of the context, and you can see here, where there's a lot of things that we can get out of the application. It's probably where the student is going to spend the bulk of their time. When you hear like the application process is stressful, they're not talking necessarily about asking teachers for recommendation letters. They're talking about writing the essay and making a resume and figuring out how to phrase things and what to talk about at length and what to just mention briefly. So we can learn about a student's family. Are they going to be the first person in their family to go to college? Are they the 50th person in their family to attend Lehigh? Neither of those is better or worse. They're just different, but we're curious. We want to know. We look at what they're passionate about. Does a student have a job? Do they want to have a job? Do they need to have a job? That's very different. What level of dedication are they showing to the activities? Is it 1 or 2 hours a week? Is it the entire summer? All of those kinds of things. In the body of the application, there's a significant amount of writing. Everybody always thinks about the essay, and that's a big piece of it. So we read the essays. Do you actually read the essays? Yes, we actually do. So we are looking to get a sense of a student's personality through that and the tone that they use. And some students are very funny and they write funny essays, and some students have a lot of hardship that they want to share with us, and they're very emotionally written. Sometimes it's written really creatively, like it's like a screenplay, or there's a lot of quotes in it. So those are all very different approaches that students have taken in the past to applying. We learn about any disciplinary issues. At Lehigh, we don't see that a lot, but it is something that we discuss. And this is, really where we learn about the applicants in a non-academic way. It's where we learn about who they are as human beings and as potential members of our community. So it's really cool. I think, the transcript is the first piece that I open, but then my favorite part is the actual application itself, because that's where I get a lot of the personality from. One of the examples I give is, there was a student a couple years ago who applied, and she had a job at Chipotle. And often students will tell us about jobs that they have. And so when we're looking at an application, we're not just kind of checking off boxes, right? Like, has a job. We're looking more into it. And this student worked so many hours that she and her manager had to look into child labor and benefit laws, because she was basically working to the point of getting benefits. And so think about how many hours a week that is, in addition to being at school, and hopefully in addition to her sleeping at some point. So that's different than, I work 2 hours a week in the summer mowing lawns for my elderly neighbor. It's not that she was automatically admitted, oh my gosh, this is just the only thing that we're going to hinge this decision on, but it tells us something about her. It's interesting, and it's different than what that other student may also be listing as other activities. She didn't really have anything else, but in her case, it was okay. So then there's a supplement. Lehigh has a supplemental application, and it tells us more Lehigh specific information. So we are there able to drill down more in detail about what they want to do at Lehigh. So if you say you're pre-med, okay, great, but at Lehigh, what does that mean? Does that mean that you want to major in English and be pre-med, or biological sciences and be pre-med, or bioengineering and be pre-med? Because students can do all of those options at Lehigh. They can tell us the specific activities they want to do while they're in college. And so there are different options. They don't have fraternities and sororities in high school, but we have them here. And so they can tell us if they're interested in that or interested in different sports, music, politics, anything. We get a sense of whether or not they're actually interested in Lehigh. They can prove that they've done some amount of research into us and are knowledgeable about what we offer, what makes us stand out, what makes us a great place, and how they fit in there. And so how they'll take advantage of it. It gives us a sense of, whether or not they have buy-in for Lehigh's push to be an actively anti-racist institution. So we haven't necessarily specifically directly asked students, but we have changed our supplemental questions this year because that is something that we're now considering. Are the people that we are now newly bringing to campus on board with this plan? And if they're not, that's okay. But we want to know that they are at least thinking about it, or that when they apply, that expectation was set. So when they come here and they see something happen, they can speak out about it and say, hey, this is something that this community is holding me accountable for. It's something that's important to the people here. And I want to be a part of that. So there's a lot of really great content here. For us, it's going to be different for every college. So if you are a student or a parent of a student who is going to apply to different universities and colleges, all supplements aren't the same. The common application, kind of hence the name, and also the bulk of the coalition application are identical, and that will go to Lehigh and college A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, but the supplements are all going to be totally different. We don't do it on purpose to drive you crazy, but it is a nice side effect. We love driving students and their parents crazy. That's a joke. So we also ask for recommendations. We ask for one teacher and one counselor. Students are able to send more than that. We do not encourage students to send more or much more than that because each letter has a different purpose. And so from a teacher recommendation, we get a sense of who they are day to day in a classroom. Hopefully that will be a class that the teacher can speak to, overcoming some things, or, it's not just going to be a teacher where the student put in no work and got an A and never asked any questions and just kind of skated through, but a class where they maybe did get a bad grade on one exam and had to come in and get extra help, or where things really clicked. We want to know who you are going to be in an academic sense. And so we get some of that through the transcript, and then we get the personality of that through the teacher recommendation. Is this the student that is always raising their hand, always wants to read aloud in class? Or is it the student where when they raise their hand, everybody is quiet and turns and looks because they know it's going to be like, wow, this is going to be big. This student is always like really insightful. Again, not better or worse, just different. We get a counselor recommendation as well. And so this gives us a sense of how they are in the context of that whole school. So looking at all the students who are applying to college that year, how they approach the admissions process, were they doing it on their own? Were the parents really involved? Were they really focused in? Are they applying to a lot of schools, a few schools? Are they looking to leave home? Are they not? All those kinds of things. There's other as well. And we will not tell you to not send letters, but I will encourage anyone who is not just in this presentation to just listen about admissions in general, to really just pick one. Like, you don't need to have 1,000 recommendation letters. Kind of looks suspicious if you send too many. They should also be recent recommendations. Every year we get students who submit recommendations from their kindergarten teacher, and that's so sweet and I love it. But if you haven't talked to them in 12 years, I don't need a recommendation letter from them. If you were a great student in kindergarten, you're probably going to be a great student in your senior or junior year. So if a student does work, if they play a sport, if they perform in performing arts, if they know an alum, if they have taken classes in a college, right, and they want to have a professor write them a recommendation. These are all excellent, excellent choices. But there is an art to following directions. And so we only require 2 letters. You shouldn't send us 16. But if somebody can provide a different point of view, then absolutely send that letter. That could be really helpful. Students will sometimes choose to send an extra teacher recommendation. Maybe one is a science teacher and one's a history teacher, and we can get that like different sense of classroom persona. That's totally okay too. But you probably shouldn't be encouraging anybody to do like 2 teachers, a counselor, a coach, a mentor, and a boss, because it's a lot of extra reading. So we are a test optional institution for this cycle. A decision has not been made on whether or not that will apply next year, but please stay tuned because we will make it very, very, very public, whichever way we decide to go. We are using both SAT or ACT, whichever a student prefers, whichever they have chosen to take. We will super score both, and super score meaning that we only see the highest math and the highest verbal, or in the case of the ACT, it's reading, verbal, and math and science. So we will only see those highest scores and we'll combine them to make a super score, the best possible score that the student could have. If we are test optional next year, we encourage students to not send the scores at all if they don't want us to see them. If you aren't sure or if that's a factor, assume that you don't want us to see them. And then if you get the scores back and you really are proud of them, then you can send them later. But it's always easier to add than to take away as far as testing is concerned. And then once the submit button is hit, there's still more that can be done. We offer interviews to students. They can come in and they can chat with us and tell us more about themselves, but interviews are also starting to be offered in the spring semester. So that can start for any parents of juniors. They can start to have interviews earlier. We look at updated grades, right? So it's not just your transcript from 9th to 11th grade. We do get updates about what's going on senior year, and it does matter. Any updates? I got an awesome email from a student. He's like, hey, I'm in this club. We got selected to do this presentation. We're really excited about it. And, you know, my robotics group placed 3rd in the state, and awesome. Like, we love hearing these really great updates. Likewise, any changes? Oh, I decided to drop economics and now I'm going to take anatomy and physiology because I'm really thinking I want to be a doctor. Okay, perfect. That's a great thing for me to know about. And then a continuing interest, you know, so anything that students think about that they want to share, or if they don't have an opportunity to see campus in person until after they've applied, they can say, oh, I came to campus and the hills were crazy, but I'm still super excited and I really want to know. Now Lehigh is an even more top choice for me, for my college process. So there's 2 different types of applications that we accept We do early decision 1 and 2, and we have regular decision. And early decision 1 and 2 are separate. They do have separate deadlines. It's a different timeline. And there are benefits to early decision. It has the highest acceptance rate. Early decision 1 has the highest. Early decision 2 is slightly lower, just teeny tiny bit lower. And it's a much faster process. So from the deadline until students get their decision back is usually about a month or so. Whereas in regular decision, they submit their application January 1st, and then they don't hear back until late March. So the drawbacks of early decision is that you don't get to compare. So many students and parents have this moment of like, oh, we're going to lay out all of your acceptance letters on the table and we're going to take a picture and you can go through them and we're going to compare, oh, Lehigh's offering this and, you know, this school's offering that and that school's offering this. You don't get that. You're kind of proposing marriage to Lehigh. You're getting down on one knee and saying like, is this going to work? And if we say yes, you're sort of locked into that. You can't say like, yes, and then you go, well, I'm actually going to ask a few other people. So it's for students who are really serious about Lehigh, who really want to be here and who know that we're their top choice. The majority of applications come in regular decision because students like to have choices, and moreover, their parents like to have choices, especially when it comes to financial aid packages and scholarships and research opportunities and all of that. So the deadline is pretty standard. It's January 1st, and the drawback is that you do have to wait, and it is more selective to apply regular decision because we're spoiled for choice, right? We have more applicants. Just to reiterate the deadlines and the decisions, early decision is the early one, and then early decision 2 and regular decision are both on January 1st. So sometimes we have students come to us on January 1st and say, I want to be early decision, and sometimes they say, I want to be regular decision. We're happy for both. And finally, tips from Lehigh. So, you know, what do we think are best practices? What advice would I give students in high school? What are just some general things that make sense for anyone in the admissions process or shortly to be in the admissions process? Is think about the classes in high school that you like as a student. You know, what do you like about them? And I actually had a conversation with some teenagers, some youths a few weeks ago, and I said like, well, what about, what's your favorite class? Science. Okay, great. What about science do you like? And they were like, well, I've never thought about it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine that you've never thought about it, but now I'm asking you to think about it. What is it about science that you like? Is it that you have a really good teacher and it wouldn't matter if they taught you history or they taught you science? Or do you like doing the experiments? Do you like not knowing, the exact outcome? Do you like, solving problems? And then using that knowledge, think about how you can take more of those classes in high school and what that might translate to. And so, what do you like about high school? What do you like about academics? And then translate that into a possible major or career. When you start the admissions process and when you're beginning to do your research, I recommend keeping a list of questions that you would like to know answers for any college that you're considering. Thinking like study abroad, where can you go? Or do you have to be a certain year to go abroad? Questions about having a car on campus, or any kind of thing that you might want to know about any future college. Start a spreadsheet or start a Google Doc or something, and keep a list of questions, and that way everybody's answers and you can compare apples to apples. Think about making the application really personal and not just perfect. Heavily edited and over analyzed applications are always less engaging than the very genuine human done by a 17 or 18-year-old applications. And so we want to know the real person. I love when students write about the time they spend doing their hobbies. Like everybody's like, okay, well, I have to list that I'm in the National Honor Society, and I have to list that I, work part-time, and I have to list this, a thing that I did in school that's very prestigious and very lovely. But then they don't tell me that they knit, and they love to knit. And those are the things, those are the really human pieces that can make an application really, really engaging. So we encourage students to make it personal to them and not focus so much on what they think we want to hear, because they probably don't know. Make sure to be professional. Certainly we encourage students to reach out to us. Not every college will encourage you to reach out to their admissions office, but if a student wants to reach out to a professor or an admissions rep, or is just emailing a general email account, be professional. Respond when somebody emails you or tells you that you're missing something. Don't be like, I don't care, you guys suck. We get those all the time. It's always very charming. But just like, okay, thank you. Or like, I'm no longer interested, please remove me from your list. Or just hit unsubscribe. All of those things are options. If you're going to send an email, good morning or dear so-and-so, not like, yo, what's up? Or like, hey, tell me about your science program. Like, okay, that's not a great way to start an email. And finally, we're here to help. So you can reach out to us. I'm going to throw a link in the chat. Our admissions office has counselors for every place in the world. And so depending on where a student goes to high school, or if you just have a general question, you can get in touch with the person who is kind of the expert on that area. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will put it into the chat so that anybody who wants to reach out to a specific person will be able to get in touch with them. So that's what I have as promised. I went a little bit over, but that's what I had ready to kind of lay out. But I know that this kind of topic and just the college process in general is always something that people are curious to learn more about. So throw your questions in the chat or get ready to unmute, but I will also start with the questions that somebody sent me via email, because I want to make sure that I get to them. So the first question is, what are ideas for setting yourself apart from other applicants and increasing your chances for admission? This is a question we get all the time, and it's a really great question. And so I will come back to being an authentic human being and person, and not a cookie cutter, like this is what I think a college admissions office wants. I think when I get a sense of an individual human through an application, it usually works out better for the student. And what's even nicer is if I ever get a chance to meet them in person, or if I know they're coming to campus, I can connect them with people who will be excited to meet them. So, like we had a student who was really passionate about like designing her own sneakers. Like she has this like business where she buys plain white sneakers and then she paints them and makes them all like cool and customized. And so I knew she was coming to campus, but I'd never met her before. And so as people were walking in the door in like alumni memorial, I'm looking at everybody's shoes, and instantly I was like, I know you're Stacy. You're Stacy. And she was like, oh my gosh. So those are the things that make you set apart, is where there's something interesting about you that you have opened yourself up and been vulnerable and shared about yourself. As far as increasing your chances for admission, the best thing you can do is be a good student. You know, all classes are important. Even if it's a class that you know you're never going to major in, you should still perform well. And so that's a conversation to have parents with the teachers and with the guidance counselors and the students all together in what level of course is right? Maybe you shouldn't be in honors Spanish. Maybe you should be in regular kind of college prep Spanish, and maybe you only take 2 years of that, but then senior year, you're going to be taking 2 AP level math because you absolutely love math way more than you love a language. Totally fine. Those are just examples. The second question is, when we tour with virtual tours or self-guided tours, is that logged as an activity? Awesome question. Unfortunately, we don't have the technology to know exactly where you are on campus, but outside of Alumni Memorial, there are cards and you can fill them out. So if you take a self-guided tour, you can absolutely get credit for that. Since you all work here, and if you have a student who's interested in Lehigh, tell them to just send us an email and say, hey, you know, I walked around with my parent or my guardian or my, you know, aunt or uncle, or my cousin goes here and I walked around. So, you know, this is where having that communication is really important. If you do one of our virtual programs, so we offer a ton, we offer virtual tours, virtual information sessions. That's a little bit more about the nitty gritty Lehigh application process. So if you thought that's what I was going to talk about, you can get that in an information session. We do student panels, we do special sessions about different academic opportunities that we have. Those do get tracked. So yes, we absolutely will pay attention to that. And so I see some questions in the chat. Thank you. I'll start going through those. How does this process differ for a student transferring from a two-year college? Amazing question. It is slightly different in that transfer students have a different application. It's a little bit shorter, good for them. And obviously we're going to be paying attention to their college grades and their college preparation as well. So we ask them a different essay question. We ask them, you know, to describe their journey and how that is going to prepare them and lead them to Lehigh. You know, why are you thinking of transferring? So that's a slightly different question. We wouldn't ask that to a Lehigh student applying as a first year. But we are also kind of recognizing that they may be a little bit more independent in the process. And so we don't require parent information. We don't require high school information necessarily at a deeper level like we would with a first year applicant. So if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out. My colleague that works with transfer students. His name is Derek Fox. I'm going to throw that in the chat. You can follow the link and get his email, or you can just type it in your email. Derek works with all transfer students, so he's the best person to reach out. The second question is, what is the difference between deferred and waitlisted? And what can you do to help that lead to an acceptance? So deferred, now you're learning the lingo. I love it. So deferred is an option for early decision applicants. That's the only time we would defer a student. And deferring means kind of what the word means, which means delaying. And so if we can't make a clear decision of whether the student should definitely be admitted or definitely be denied, in early decision, we may choose to defer. And that moves them out of early decision and into regular decision. And so the decision that you get with a defer is kind of a not right now, but we'll get back to you. And so why might we defer a student? Well, if that student's high school trajectory started out pretty rocky in 9th grade and is on the upswing here, in early decision 1, we don't have time to see the mid-years because the students get their decisions back before the semesters, switch. So we might need that information to make sure that senior year really is going to go well for them. In some cases, students tell us that they, are expecting some testing results that they want us to see, but they may not be ready yet. So that might be a reason to defer. It may also, be some more personal reasons why we would defer a student. And so that is where a student will be reevaluated in regular decision, and then they will get their final decision with the regular decision applicants in late March. A wait list is a decision that an early decision 2 or a regular decision student could get, because at the time where you apply, on January 1st, we kind of have all the information we're going to get without, barring like the updates of further grades and like further accolades and awards and honors and whatnot. So we really aren't going to get anything like revolutionarily new. So a wait list is a decision which many students get because we are very lucky and very thankful to get thousands of applicants for around 1,500 seats. So we can't admit everybody that would be successful here and that would contribute to the community. And so what we do is we keep a little reserve list, a wait list of students on the side. And we say, we can't tell you can come right away, but we would really love to have the option of having you come. And students on the wait list can say, yes, keep me here. I'm excited. I'm interested. I would still love to be, a part of the Lehigh community. Or, nah, I'm good. I got into another school. I'm excited about them. I'm done with Lehigh. I'm over you. So what can a student do to increase their chances of being chosen off the wait list? Be in touch, right? I hate to bring this on myself in my office, but sometimes squeaky wheels get greased. And if my boss, right, if the director comes to me and says, hey, I need, 10 students in the College of Engineering, and we're going to take them off the wait list. And I'm like, oh, I know Becky, and she is so excited about engineering, she's going to come to mind first. So I will encourage them to keep updating us, especially with the good stuff, and be in touch. And those are the ways to impact that decision. As far as impacting a deferral, making sure that you're continuing to do really good work, right, and continuing to keep those grades up. If you're deferred, that is not the time to start getting senioritis. That is not good timing at all. The next question I see is, who would an employee who would also be a transfer student reach out to? So if you yourself are thinking of becoming a student, I think transferring would be Derek. If you have like, we know each other now, right? Like we're all friends. So if you want to reach out to me with a specific question, you're always welcome to do that, or your regional counselor. I think that's, okay. Does the attendance at a public, private, virtual, or charter school have an effect on their admissions rates? This is a really good question. And the answer is not really. We don't have like a quota, like, oh, we've got too many virtual school students coming this fall. Like we don't really pay attention to that. What does have an effect is whether or not we feel the student is academically prepared. And so there are some high schools, I have one in New Jersey, which is a public magnet, and it is incredibly rigorous. And even students who aren't taking a ton of AP level courses will be successful here at Lehigh, because just the regular old classes are unbelievably challenging. There are other schools where we do not feel that way, where just a standard college prep curriculum would not be enough for a student to be academically successful at Lehigh. And so I think the attendance and the type of school and the opportunities afforded are a contextual factor. It's not a make or break. It's not like, well, we refuse to admit anybody who goes to a charter school. There's no kind of set principles like that. But it is something that we would factor into their performance and their grades and the curriculum available to them, and how well they have been prepared for an academic Lehigh career. I did get a question. Will the recording be available to access later? Yes, absolutely. It will be available to access. And so, feel free to come back and watch it again, or make your student watch it, or whoever else might be involved. Other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if our students, obviously want to come to Lehigh because they enjoy Lehigh, and also because of the tuition factor for us, is there any recommendation on whether they should do early decision or regular decision, and how much weight does it hold that their parent works at Lehigh? Or
Awesome
does
question.
it hold no weight at all?
It absolutely is a factor, right? Like we look at whether or not they have a family member who attended Lehigh. We look at whether or not they have family members who work at Lehigh, and that's a question. That's a question on our supplement. Does anybody employed? And so even if it's not you, in this Zoom room, right, it's mostly going to be you as a parent or a caregiver. But is also maybe sometimes students who apply who say, oh yeah, you know, maybe you have a niece or nephew, and they're like, yeah, my Aunt Tara works there. That's something we consider, because what's really interesting to us is these students have had an opportunity to learn about Lehigh in a very unique way. They have had an opportunity to see Lehigh a little bit behind the curtain, right? You know, I'm sure everyone in this room comes home and talks about the work that they do and the things that are great and the things that are maybe not always great, the things that need to improve. And so if a student is still very interested in Lehigh, that's really great for us to know, that, you know, they aren't just applying to apply, but they have thought about it. They have been exposed in a lot of different ways. You know, maybe they've been coming to campus since they were kids. You know, it's a different type of education process for them to get a sense of what Lehigh is all about. So is it a factor? Yes. Should they apply early decision? That is a question that only you and your family can answer. You know, are there benefits? Yes, definitely. If you want to get it locked up and your student is like, yep, I'm very happy to go to Lehigh, I don't want, you know, I'm not going to fight you to go to school X, Y, or Z, then yeah, I think early decision is a really great way to just get it over with and kind of, you know, be able to relax and not have to stress over the winter break or winter holidays about getting an application in. But if you know, I joke, like I have kids that I hope will be members of the class of 2038 and 2040. And I joke with them, I'm like, well, you're going to Lehigh. And then I think, like, that's not fair, right? I had a great experience here. I love it. I work here. I would love to get a tuition benefit if they still do that in 2038 and 2040, which I hope they will. But I'm not going to force them, right? So it's up to you. If they are locked in, they're like, yeah, mom, I'm pumped about this. You know, I'm ready. I'm excited. Then yeah, early decision, welcome. We would love to have them apply that way. But if as a family you decide, you know, there might be scholarships out there for you that would make it competitive for you to go somewhere else, or we don't offer the major. If you want to be a nursing student or a nurse, we don't have that. We can't offer that to you. And so there are other better colleges, and regular decision would probably be a better choice.
And just as a follow-up to that, so not just you know, coming from a parent point of view, but just an admissions point of view, if a student applies early decision and you said that's November 1st or January 1st if it's ED2. So if they go with the first one, the November 1st, they know within about a month. That gives them time to apply to other colleges. Is that how that works? Or no? How does that whole process work?
Excellent question. So if you apply early decision 1, you'll find out mid-December. We always say mid-December. So it's somewhere, you know, in the teens typically. If they are admitted, process is over.
Right.
That's not to say that they can't ask questions or clarify things. You know, there's some paperwork that gets involved. We want to make sure that they don't have any other applications elsewhere, because early decision is binding. You are locking that school in. However, if they are not admitted because they've been deferred or they've been denied, then yes, they would have that time, right? They'd have about 2 weeks, the remaining time in December, to apply to other colleges with a January 1st deadline. Please keep in mind, colleges have all sorts of different deadlines. Some colleges have an October deadline, November, they have January, they have February. Some colleges have rolling decisions. So you don't, you know, you can apply whenever. You can apply March and they would, you know, just process the application on a rolling point. But speaking from a Lehigh perspective, yes, the students that we don't admit early decision would then have to apply to other colleges because we wouldn't be an option for them.
And sorry, one more question on that.
No, I love it.
So is it, if they want to apply to Lehigh early decisions, should they not apply anywhere else early decision? Or can you have, like this common application, I've never seen it, I'm not at that point yet, but can you apply at multiple colleges or only one for the early decision?
Can't, just one early decision.
Okay.
Now, but here's a pro tip, right? Early decision 1 and early decision 2. Sometimes we get students who applied to a very selective college, right? Single digit acceptance rate, early decision 1, because they think, well, this is the best chance I have of getting in. And then they don't get in, but then they apply early decision 2 to Lehigh. So if you're applying early decision, you can only have one active application out in an early decision round.
Okay.
But you could have an active application out for early decision 2 if you're not admitted early decision 1.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. And
Thank
so
you.
there's a lot of like different types. So Lehigh does early decision 1 and early decision 2 in regular. There's early action. That's not binding. So they can apply to as many early action schools as they want. There's restricted early action, which is like basically early decision, but slightly different. There's rolling decision, which is just, you know, things come in and the decisions go out, and it's a lot more flexible. There's colleges that do priority deadlines, you know, well, yeah, you can apply by January 1st, but if you want any kind of scholarship, you got to apply by October 1st. And, you know, so there's a lot of different scenarios. And that's why I strongly encourage you to start that. Maybe it's a spreadsheet, or maybe it's a Google Doc of like questions that you have, or, you know, facts about each college that a student is considering. You know, do they have this major? Do they have this club? Are they, you know, are they an early decision school? Or are they an early action school? You know, who's my contact person? All those, you know, kinds of questions that are individual to each student and family. A question that I got in is, what does binding mean? Fantastic. Binding means that you, as an applicant, a parent or caregiver, and the school counselor have signed an agreement that if the student is admitted, they will attend. Now, we're not going to come to your house and force you in handcuffs to move into Lehigh. And there are always students who apply binding, early decision, and end up not enrolling. But they are pretty much making a moral agreement that they are applying in good faith as their top choice, and if we admit them, they are coming. So that's what binding means. And we don't offer, so can transfer students apply early decision? Transfer students can't. Transfer students can only apply through the transfer process. And so there's not really any early or regular. It's, well, I mean, I guess it's just all regular, but you know, binding would be an option for first year applicants, and they would really be, we say it's like proposing marriage. You know, you're putting yourself out there and you're like, here I am, boy, I hope you say yes. But if they do say yes, it's pretty much a done deal. Any other questions, thoughts?
I'll go again. I have lots of questions. So if your student gets waitlisted, okay, and then they end up not getting accepted to Lehigh at all, and they go somewhere else for a year, then if they wanted to try again, they would go through the transfer application, not the regular application.
You've got it exactly right. Yep. Transfer applications are for students who have enrolled somewhere else at some point. And so, you know, if you're taking college classes in high school, no, you're not a transfer student. But if you've done the admissions process once and gone somewhere, if you're going to do it again, that makes you a transfer. And
how would you find out? So if your student goes somewhere else but really wants to get back to Lehigh, who would be the contact? How would they find out if I take these classes at this college, or if I go to community college for a year and try to get back in? How do I know that these classes will transfer to Lehigh? Is there a specific department for that?
So all credit reviews are done through registration and academic services.
Okay.
That being said, a lot of the decision-making power is given to the faculty of that department. And so the best advice, if this is a situation that anyone finds themselves in or wishes to be in, right? If a student is a dependent of a staff member and wants to be at Lehigh and is looking for a way to transfer in, I will encourage you to attend Northampton Community College or any of the other community colleges that we have an articulation agreement with, because we have a list of the Northampton classes and a list of the Lehigh classes, and we know which ones match up. And so it's a lot easier of a process. If a student goes to another four-year college because they think they might like it better, or because they don't get into Lehigh, and then they transfer, we don't guarantee anything. And it's also not a process that the registrar and his staff are willing to do before admission. So the best thing is, I would say Northampton. But that being said, if a student wants to go to another four-year school or doesn't want to go to Northampton, or you live in Bucks County, right? And that, you know, it's much harder to go to Northampton, then don't let that hold you back, because for the most part, introductory level, first year level classes, for the most part, not all the time and not as a rule, but a lot of them will transfer. You know, introductory English, introductory maths, sciences, etc. And so, you know, I encourage you, if you have questions about transferring, if that time has come or when that time comes, reach out to Derek or me again, or your regional person, or the registration and academic services staff. One other question I got in the chat was, if we've requested information, like you filled out the, you know, send me information form, and we haven't gotten anything in the mail, is everything okay? Is there a reason why we haven't received it? It's because we don't mail very much. We send everything electronically. We occasionally will do snail mail, but snail mail is slow and expensive. So for the most part, if you're getting emails from us, you're on the list, you're good. You're getting the details that you need. Ooh, do we feel that the NACAC Code of Ethics and Professional Practices change of last year affected how admissions looks at applications and or in fact affected enrollment decisions? Diane coming in with the heat at the end. I love it. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily at Lehigh.
But I was just curious.
Yeah, no, this is a fantastic, like, not necessarily like nitty gritty application process question, but
I had to look up because I know it doesn't affect early decisions, because I was thinking they could still poach early decisions, but they can't. So that's why it took me so long to ask it.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the Department of Justice had some thoughts about the admissions process, and there was a change in our kind of national organization, the National Association for College Admissions Counselors, NACAC. And it really kind of loosened up a lot of the things that we would consider just kind of like what we would have thought were best practices. Like when a student says they're going somewhere early decision, other colleges shouldn't reach out and say, hey, ditch them, we're way cooler and you should come to our school. Or, you know, we found out that you were admitted early decision to school X, we'll give you $5,000 if you come to school Y, and kind of like incentivizing it. So I do not feel that that changed things at Lehigh. We did not really change the way we did things, but I'll tell you what, about 2 weeks after that happened, some colleges were coming out with all sorts of gimmicks. There was one college that said, if you apply early decision, you get your own parking spot on campus. Could you imagine that at Lehigh? Everybody would apply early decision. It was like, you get like your own smoothie named after you. That's an exaggeration, but I mean, it was like a whole list of things that you would get if you applied early decision, special scholarships and whatnot, preferential financial aid packages. So did it have an effect? Yeah, it did. And I can't say that we changed too terribly much, but it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. Because, you know, one college does it, and then it's like, ooh, that's a good idea. And then others jump in. So awesome question, Diane. Stay tuned. You'll come along for the ride with us. Awesome. Anything else? I think I got all the chat questions. If I didn't, feel free to yell at me. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for spending some lunchtime with me. I really appreciate having the opportunity. You're always welcome to reach out. Don't be a stranger. And feel free to shoot me an email or whoever your regional person was. And I'll hopefully be able to work with you or your student or your family member in the coming years.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you,
No worries,
Sarah.
thank you.
Great information.
Thank you.
Thank you.